Hashem, today's Daf Yomi is Menachos Daf Pei Tes Menachos 89, and the Gemara is discussing the mission on the bottom of Pei Ches Amud Aleph that goes through what each of the measurements in the Beis Hamikdash was used for, and said that the half lug shemen, the half a lug, was used for shemen latoda, meaning to say that you needed a measure in the temple, which is called a half lug, and that was for oil for the carbon toda. So what does that mean? So we know that the carbon toda has four different types of bread that are used. The 40 loaves total. Each type of bread has 10 loaves, and 30 of those loaves are chametz. They are the chalos, rikikin, and revuchin, the thicker loaves. The rikikin usually understood to be the thinner loaves, and the revuchin, the boiled, the loaves that are placed in boiling water. On top of that, those three loaves all got oil. And on top of that, there's the 10 loaves of the chametz which don't get oil. So Tanya, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Matam Omer, Bashemen, Bashemen, Shnei Pamim. So there's a pasuk that discusses the carbon toda, and this pasuk says the word matzos bulos bashemen, rikikei matzos meshachim bashemen, v'so as morbechas chalos bulos bashemen. It says the word bashemen by each of the types of loaves of bread. So Rabbi Akiva says, why does it say bashemen, bashemen the first two times? Shnei pamim. Why does it say it the first two times? If it just had the first shemen about the chalos, or on the top of Peites Amud Aleph, 89a at the top, if it just said the shemen by the chalos, then Hayiti Omer Areu Kechol Menachos Lulug. I would say that it is like all the carbon minchos with respect to a lug. That means to say that it would require, like every carbon mincha, most carbon minchos have one lug of oil. But here, with respect to the shemen, we're getting half a lug, and it's going to be divided up amongst the different carbonos. So if it just said it once, I would say that the carbon toda is like everything else, that it gets one total lug of oil. Achshav shekatzav v'shemen b'shemen, but now that it says v'shemen twice, that the second shemen by the rikikin is what's called a riboy acha riboy, an expansion after an expansion. Ve'in riboy acha riboy elamai. We've had this principle several times in our tractate, and whenever there's an expansion after an expansion, it diminishes, it limits. So miato akosav l'chatzi lug. So therefore, the Torah is telling us that this carbon toda doesn't get a full lug; it gets a half a lug. The Gemara says, 1 second, why is this a riboy achar riboy? This is not an expansion after an expansion. It's two times it says shemen. The first time you need it to tell us it needs oil, and there's only one expansion. There's a riboy achar riboy, chad riboyhu. It's one expansion, not two expansion. Ella, ilu nemar b'shemen kol ikar. If it had not mentioned oil at all, hayiti omer arel kachol menachos lulug. I would have said, says the Gemara, that it requires. And the Brisa says, I would have thought that it was like all menachos requires one lug. Alshav shenemar b'shemen b'shemen. Now that it says b'shemen twice, have a riboy acha riboy. Now it says shemen twice. It's an expansion after an expansion. Meaning to say it didn't need to mention oil at all, because I would have just said it's like every other mincha. If it doesn't mention the shemen, why would I think it's different? So therefore, both are additional, and so therefore, it's coming to be mimayit. Look. So therefore, the Torah is telling us the carbon toda only gets a half a lug of oil. Meaning, I might think that this half a lug of oil is divided up amongst the three loaves of matzah, i.e., the three different types of bread that are matzah for the carbon toda, the chalos, revuchin, and the rikikin. I might have thought that. Chalos, rikikin, revicha, kishuomer, bashemen, berevicha. So when it says bashemen, revicha, she'ein tam omer, it didn't need to say it, because we could have learned it out from the other two times. Riba Shemen Revicha. So it's telling us that the Revicha, the matzah that's placed in boiling water, gets extra oil. Okay, so how is the carbon toda divided? It's maybe chatiluk shemen. So you bring a half lug of oil. The chotzeu chatil chalos or kikin. The chatil revicha. You make half to be with the chalos and revikin, and the other quarter is going to go for the revicha, the chatzor revicha. And that's why we need the half a lug of oil. Amor Rebbe Lezer ben Azariah, Akiva, is an unusual expression. Rebbe Lezer ben Azariah is not buying Rabbi Akiva's drasha of the word shemen, shemen. It says Akiva, he calls him by his first name, Imatam marbe kol yom kulo b'shemen b'shemen eini shomei. Even if you are expanding the whole day, if you're discussing the whole day, b'shem b'shemen, I wouldn't listen to you. Elochatzi, meaning I don't buy it. Elochatzi l'kshemen l'toda. Why do we need a half log of shemen for the toda? Or via shemen l'nazir. And the idea that the nazir requires a quarter log of oil. V'chadas ar yom shebein nida l'nida halacha Moshe miSinai. Because these three halachos are all laws from Moshe at Sinai. The fact that the toda gets a half log of oil, that's not based upon Bashem and Bashem. It's just a tradition from Moshe at Sinai. The fact that the nazir requires a quarter log of oil, that's also tradition from Moshe at Sinai. And we discussed the Nazirs in yesterday's daf. And then the fact that between every Nida is 11 days, that's also law from Moshe at Sinai. What does that mean? So this is just a crash course in Hilchot Nida. We're going to get to Maseches Nida. It's the last daf of the daf Yomi cycle. But God willing, we're almost there. But in short, it's that Rashi goes to a nice review of the laws here. Every woman from the time of Chava has her life divided into two periods: a 7-day period followed by an 11-day period. The 7-day period is when she is in Nida, and the 11-day period is what are called her Yemei Ziva. During the 7-day period, she has to wait those 7 days. If she sees any blood, it doesn't matter at what point she sees it, but at the end of the 7 days, biblically speaking, she goes to the mikvah. During the 11-day period that follows, she is what's called a ziva, and if she has blood 3 days in a row, she has to wait 7 clean days. If she has blood only 1 or 2 days, she's what's called shomeres yom kinege yom. She has to wait till nightfall and go to the mikvah. So this idea that every woman's life, biblically speaking, is divided to 7, 11, and continuing to this period of 7, 11 days, this is the law from Moshe Sinai, according to Rebbe Lezer ben Azariah. So now we're up to the next piece in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "Belug hayim moded," so that every mincha requires 1 lug. So there's a dispute in the Mishnah between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. The Tanna Kama says that each isaron of the mincha requires 1 lug, where Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says even a mincha of 60 isaronos requires only 1 lug. Tana Rabbanan, so the Gemara cites a brayso, the mitzora ani by if a person is poor and he's in mitzora and he brings and under those circumstances, if he can't afford the regular animals, he has a limited offering or a lesser offering, and it says about that. It says v'saron solas echad b'lul b'shemen u'minchad v'log shemen. So what do we do with this pasuk? And isaron, a flour mixed with oil for a mincha, and a lug of oil. So what does this teach us? Mitzvah aniksiv isaron b'lul v'lug. We made our isaron shaton lug. This teaches us that the isaron requires a lug. Divrei chachamim. The Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Lezer, afilu mincha shel shishim esronim eno elo luga. Even if there were mincha would have a large amount of 60 esronim, we would still say, altogether only gets 1 lug. Why? Shenemar lemincha v'lug shemen. So Rabbi Nechemia darshans it from the fact that it says lemincha v'lug shemen. Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, what do? according to them, it has even 60 yes or no's, it gets one lug. So what? Hai isaron balul velug my avidle. What do they do with the fact that it says isaron balul velug? What do they do with it? Ahu legufe. So they're saying that's needed for the halacha itself. The Amar Achmana laisi chad isaron. Torah is telling us that the Mitzorah Ani, the Mitzorah who is poor, brings one isaron of flour for his mincha. That's all he's required to bring, and he doesn't have to give more than that. So the Gemara says v'idach, and the Chachamim, what do they do with that pasuk? How do they know that halacha? L'gufe lo tzarach. He says we don't need a pasuk to teach us that. Midigoy Rachmana gabe mitzorah, and the fact that the Torah tells us about a mitzorah who is wealthy, shlosha karbanos shlosha esronos. We know that the mitzorah who is wealthy brings 3 karbanos and 3 esronos. Hacha the chad carbon chad isaron. But here by the poor mitzorah, since it's only one animal, you only have to bring one isaron. It's obvious. We don't need a pasuk for it. The idach, Rabbi Nechemiah, Rabbi Lezer, and Yaakov. What do they say about that? They'll say itzrach. No, we still need a pasuk. So you might have thought whole v'chos rachmana aleilah isuye b'doah. Since the Torah has compassion on this poor man to bring a lesser offering, I might have thought it's not proportional. Maybe he doesn't need a mincha at all. Whereas the Chamim say, no, we never found that he's going to be legami completely exempt from a mincha. Meaning every single type of carbon by the wealthy mitzorah the poor man has to bring is just in a limited manner. V'Rabbanan, the Rebbe Lezer and Yaakov and Menachos, they say lug shemen. They say mincha v'lug shemen teach us one lug for 60 yes or no. So what do the Rabbanan do with that? This is telling us that if a person is making a donation of a mincha, that he can't bring less than something that requires a lug. And what is the minimum amount that requires a lug? Isaron. You have to bring a minimum of isaron for every mincha. Whereas the Rabbi Nechemiah, Rabbi Lezer, and Yaakov, they say we learn both things from that pasuk. Normally, we don't learn both things from one pasuk, but 2 things from one pasuk. But here in this case, we are. Shishul apart. So we said that you need the measurements in the mikdash for a hin, 1 hin for a hin, a chatzi hin, a shlishis a hin, a revius a hin, and so the 6 lugin. So 1 hin is 12 lugin. So 6 lugin was for a bull, 4 lugin was for the ram, and for the wine and oil nesachim that accompanied the bull, it needed to be 6 lugin of oil mixed with flour and 6 lugin of wine that was poured on the altar. For the ram, it was 4, and for the lamb, it was 3. Minoan, how do we know this? So Gemara says, a half a hin, which is 6 lugin, was used for the bull. Hin tracer lugin havian. The hin was 12 lugin. D'chsiv shemen zayis hin. D'chsiv shemen mishchas kodesh. So it says shemen zayis hin. So it says about the hin that was used to anoint the utensils. It calls it a shemen zayis hin. D'chsiv shemen mishchas kodesh yezeh li l'dorotechem. And it says this anointing oil will be for me. The word zeh here is extra. Zeh b'gematria treis arajan. But then the numerical value of zeh is 12. And so we know that a hin is 12 lugin. And so this is one of the rare cases where gematria is used to derive halacha. Another case where it's used is by a get, where also the word zeh is by a get, because of by the word zeh, by a get, is the get. How do we know get? It's 12 lines. I thought it was from zeh, but maybe it's from get. I'm forgetting. Is it from the gematria of get, which is 12, or is it from zeh? Okay, we can look it up afterward. Shlosha mechzor menorah, 3.5 lug of oil was used for the menorah. Chatzi lug kol ner, half lug for every candle. How do we know that each flame in the menorah required half a lug of oil? The Tanur Rabbanan, based upon the fact that we have a price that says me eravad boker, that you have to light the menorah from the evening until the morning. So what do we learn from that? Tein lamidah, so I put into the menorah, into the lamp, a measure that will last, light and last, me eravad boker. From evening till morning, which is a half lug. Davar achar me eravad boker, alternatively from evening till morning. The only avoda that's kosher from evening into morning is the lighting of the menorah. V'shiru chachamim, and the chacham established chatzi lug, that's half of the lug of oil, orta v'ad safra, from the evening until the morning. Iked Amri, some say, how did they determine this? How did the chachamim determine that from the evening until the morning was a half a lug of oil? So how did they get that? So trial and error, experimentation. Some say milamala lamata. Some say that they started measuring from above to below shiru, meaning first they put in al fulug, and then they just kept going down and down each night while they were experimenting until they realized it was a half lug. And some say they determined it the opposite way. Started with less and less until they get to more. The one who said they started below and got to above, shiru Torah, shiru, that's how they measured it. Torah chasam because the Torah wanted to save the Jewish people money, and so therefore they didn't want to waste all the oil. So they started less and less until they got to more and more. So when it says they went above and went below, we don't deal with poverty when we're in a place of wealth, meaning we don't act frugally when it comes to a mitzvah. So we have these two competing principles. The Torah wants to save us money, but also when it comes to serving Hashem, don't have poverty in a place of wealth. Now we have proportion, chemistry. You can remember each one of the carbonos, they have an nisachim associated with it, and that is the oil that's mixed in with the mincha and the flour, with the oil and the flour, and also you have the wine that's poured on. So you can mix up the niskei parim with the niskei elim, the one that's accompanying a bowl, the nisachim, which we said accompany the bowl, can be mixed up with the nesachim of the elim, and the reason is because they have the same proportion, that 2 lugin of oil for 1 isaron of flour, even though the bowl is 6 lugin of oil and 3 isaronos of flour, and the ram is 4 and 2. It's the same ratio. So you can mix up the nisachim of the bull with the nisachim of the ram. But the niskei keves, kvasim and niskei kvasim, shal yacha b'shal tzibur. But the nisachim of the lamb can be mixed up with the nisachim of the lamb of the individual with the communal offering, because those two are also the same ratio. Meaning to say, that's 3 to 1, not 2 to 1, but 3 to 1. And so therefore these could also be mixed up. And also, you can mix up on the top of Peites on the base, Shel Yom B'Shel Emes. You can mix up today's Nisachim with yesterday's Nisachim, because we said several times running our tractate, you don't have to bring the Nisachim that day. You could bring it even after the fact. So you can mix up today's Nisachim with yesterday's Nisachim. But you can't mix up the Nisachim of a sheep, which is 3 to 1, with a bull, which is 2 to 1. Ve'elim, ve'im ba'ulan. And if you mixed up the bull's flour and oil by itself and the ram's by itself, vinis arvu, and then they became mixed up, kasherim, it's going to be kosher. So what does this mean? Meaning to say, if you first mixed up the bull with the bull's nesachim, with the flour and the oil, and then it became mixed up with the sheep's flour and oil, that would be kosher. But but if you did it before they were mixed on their own, then it'll be possible. Meaning they first need to be mixed on their own, and if then they got mixed up with the other animals, it's okay. But if they got mixed up before, if all the ingredients were mixed up before each one was mixed up separately, each one was combined separately, then it's going to be Pasul. Hakevas Abba Omer. Okay, we're discussing the Omer. Last night we counted the eighth night. The lamb that comes with the Omer, Afal Pisha Minchaso Kifua, even though the mincha accompanying the Omer is doubled, it has two esternos of flour. Normally it's kavas is one. Let's say this lamb has double the amount. Lo ayu nisachim kefulim. The nisachim were not doubled. So the lamb has two estronos of the Omer, but it's still 3 lugin of oil and that are accompanying it. So the 2 lugin of oil. So the 2 lugin of oil and wine. Excuse me, did I say 2 lugin of oil? No, 3 lugin of oil and wine. It is 2 isronos and 3 lugin of oil and wine, which is a quarter hin. Mara says, we said in our Mishnah that the nesachim can be mixed together of the par and the ayil, or the individual kevet with the communal kevet. The Gemara says vira minu, but don't we have a contradiction? It states in the pasuk in Vayikra vihiktiro shlo yarev chalavim b'chalavim. You're not allowed to mix up the fats from one animal with the fats of another. So how can you allow the nesachim to be mixed together? So the two answers. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Read it as b'di'evid. Not that you're allowed to do it ideally, but imnis arvu ka'amar. Our Mishnah is saying that if they got mixed up, it's kosher. Gemara says, well, if that's the case, what about the second part of our Mishnah, which says if they got mixed up after they were combined on their own, then it's going to be kosher. But if you did it before, it's possible. And that's talking about the par with the keves, or the ayil with the keves, not the same type. But it says in the second part of our Mishnah, you're not allowed to mix up the nisachim of the sheep with the nisachim of the bull and the ram. And even if they were mixed up, you do want to say that they're also not kosher. But we say that they can't be kosher. We call it the racial chapchil kamer, meaning to say from the second cause of our Mishnah, it's very clear that the first cause of our Mishnah is saying even chapchil it's kosher. So what does it mean? How do we read the first part of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yochanan is saying we read it b'di'evet, but it doesn't make sense because the second part of our Mishnah is b'di'evet. The first part has to be l'chapchil. So Amar Abaye Amar. This is what the Mishnah means. Ma'arvan yenan im nis arvan salasan v'shemana. Means to say, he says Abaye, if the oil and the flour of the two different karbanos that are of the same proportion were mixed together, then we can also mix up their oil l'chapchila. But l'chapchila, we're not supposed to start by mixing up the flour and the oil. Mar says, one second, you mean to say l'chapchila, you can't mix the wines together. Initially speaking, you cannot mix up the oil. But didn't we say in the Brisa, when did we say that we cannot mix up the nisachim of the bull or the par, the ayil with the keves, besolas v'shemen? It says explicitly in the Brisa, so we can start initially speaking by mixing up the wines. Abaye says, this is how we read our Mishnah. Where the flour and the oil was already brought on the mizbeach, then we can mix the oil initially speaking. But where the flour and the oil was not yet brought, then imnis arav salta mashamnan. Then if the flour and the oil were mixed together, then we can mix up the oil l'chatchila. The imla, but if the flour and the oil were not already mixed together, so basically, they put in another step that if the flour and the oil were brought on the mizbeach, then we can mix the wine. If the flour and the oil were not brought on the mizbeach, then we can't do it. But if the flour and oil were mixed together, then we can mix the wine. So the Gemara comes on to the next one in the Mishnah. Keves abar ma'omer, that normally a sheep has 1 isaron of flour and 3 lugin of wine, or a quarter hin. But by the Omer, we have 2 isaronos of flour, but we keep the nisachim the same. The Tan Rabbanon, so the Gemara cites the Brisa, Mincha so Shnei Esronim, about the Karban Omer, which are in the middle of counting the spheres to Omer. The Karban Omer was brought on the second day of Pesach. So Mincha so, its Mincha is 2 Esronim. We made Al Keves Abama Omer, Shemincha so Kfu. It teaches us about the lamb that's brought alongside the Karban Omer, and its Mincha is doubled. Yachol Kashem Shemincha so Kfua. I might think that just like the mincha is doubled, also the wine and also the oil accompanying it is doubled. No, the same nisdachim of a regular omer, which is a quarter in. I might think that the wine is not doubled because the wine is not mixed with its mincha, but the oil that's mixed with the flour should be doubled. So mincha. So tamomer v'nisko. All the nistachav, both the wine and the oil that come alongside the flour, are only a quarter. My Talmuda, what's the basis for this drasha? Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Ksiv. It says in the pasuk, Vav Nun Samachay Viniska, the Karina Vinisko, and we read that pasuk. We read it as Vinisko. So what does this teach us? It said, Niska de Mincha can Nisko de Yayin. It teaches us that the Nisachim of the Karban Mincha are like the Nisachim of the wine. Ma Yayin Revius, Av Shemin Nam Revius. Just like the wine is Nisachim, or a quarter hin. Also, the oils are quarter hin. I'm going to just say, pause for 1 second. I didn't drink this on Pesach. I drank to buy to give me the caffeine. We're talking about measurements. And the same price after Pesach that it was 16 ounces before Pesach, now you get the same exact amount for only 14 ounces. They went down 2 ounces, kept the same price over Pesach. It's like a havdil. They didn't keep the measurement. I'm the Rabbi Yochanan. Asham Mitzorah Sheshachtu Shalol Lishmo. Let's say you have carbon Asham of a Mitzorah that was slaughtered Shalol Lishmo, meaning to say this takes us back to the very beginning of Zvachim. And the reason why we're discussing it is going to take us back to the Keves of the Omer. So we know that you have to slaughter each carbon Lishmo. So let's say you took the Asham and you slaughtered it not for Mitzorah. Remember, we said at the very beginning of Zvachim that every animal that was brought Shalol Lishmo is kosher with the exception of a chatas. And then we said that there was a machlokes about an asham. And we say that generally speaking, that the asham is valid, but he has to bring another carbon to be yotzi de chovasa. So let's say this asham mitzvah was brought Shalol Lishmo, ton nesachim. It still requires the nesachim. Shemi'ata omer came pisalto, because if you're not going to say it requires nesachim, it's going to be invalid. The Mitzorah's Asham requires Nisachim, unlike other Karbanos Asham. So even though you're doing a Shalol Shema, it still is going to require the Nisachim, like the other Asham. So let's talk about the lamb that was slaughtered for the Omer, that was slaughtered Shalol Lishmo. Its mincha should be doubled. Shemiyat American, because if you're not going to say it's a doubled mincha, i.e. 2 esronos, pisalto, you're going to invalidate it. So just like the Mitzorah's Asham requires in the Sachem, like, because otherwise you're going to say it's not kosher for an Asham. It's not kosher at all. So too, the Omer of that was brought, the Keves of the Omer that was brought Shalol Lishmo also requires the Nesachim, the double Yisarun, because or else you're going to say it's possible. And so too, V'tamid shel shachar sheshachto Shalol Lishmo. Also, if you have the carbon tamid in the morning that was slaughtered Shlo Yeiton Shnei Gezirin B'Kohen Echad should also require 2 blocks of wood and 1 Kohen. Shemiat American, because otherwise Pisolto. He disqualified it. V'tamid shal bein arbayim sheshachto shelo lishma. Once he did the tamid in the afternoon with the wrong intent, Yeiton Shnei Gezirin B'Shnei Kohanim. Then it will require the time in the afternoon that you saw Shloshmo should also require 2 blocks of wood, Shnei Gezirin, B'Shnei Kohanim. Shemiyato, and we'll see that when we get to Mesechus Tamid. Shemiyato American, because if you're not going to say that, Pisalto, you basically said it's useless. It's not anything. So Gemara says, Inachinami. That is true. But all those cases where you deviate the carbon with lishma, but the carbon can't be anything else, they're all true that you need to keep that proportion. But the Brisa only mentioned the case of the Asham, but it really should have mentioned the Mitzvah's Asham, but it really could have mentioned these other cases of the Tamid and the Keves Omer. Rava gives a different answer. Rava's answer is Bishlama Hanach Olas Ninu. Those other carbonos, you don't have to change, you don't have to keep those proportions because they're a carbon ola. You will chazu la'olas chova, and if you're not, we're on top of Tzadi Yamid If we're going to try to get to the Mishnah. It's only 5 lines away because otherwise it's a new Inyan for tomorrow's stuff. So he says, Menachos on Tzadi Yamid he says, because you could always say if it can't be brought as an obligatory ola, karve la'olas and dava. You could always move olas and dava. But by the case of the Asham Mitzorah, Ilo and Wahacha, but in our case, or the case of the Asham Mitzorah, Ilo Mukmuslei B'mil say Asham Nedava Miiko. There is no Asham Nedava. You can't have a voluntary Asham. You can't bring a voluntary Chatas, and also you can't have a voluntary Asham. It needs to be brought for a specific sin. You can't bring a voluntary Chatas or voluntary Asham. And so therefore you can't do that. Tanya Kavase to Rabbi Yochanan. In fact, we have a price like Rabbi Yochanan. Asham Mitzorah sheshachta shelo lishma, or shel nasan midamo agabe behonot. Let's say the Asham Mitzorah that you had the wrong intent, or you didn't put the blood on the behonos, the right ear, the right thumb, and the right big toe. Harezu ola legabe mizbeach v'tar nesachim v'tar asham achar latio. It does still require asham. It does still require nesachim, but you still need to bring another asham. So basically, it's the same concept. It acts like an asham, but it's not exactly an asham. This is today's daf. What a geschmack to study with my friends again after Yontif. I'll give you the schedule.